Is 6 o'clock on June 14th, 2023. I'm going to declare the Planning Commission to come to order. Could we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Solem?
Here.
Commissioner Benyon? Here. Commissioner Dahl?
Here.
Commissioner Hubler? Commissioner Sarver?
Here.
Commissioner Strauss-Boyd?
Here.
Commissioner Wilkins?
Here.
Planning and Building Supervisor Jason?
Here.
Planning Commission Clerk? Here.
Send it back. This time we take a poll for the next meeting, which will be September 13th, 2023. We're going to have a show of hands of those, and we have a quorum. So we will meet again on September 13th. Approval of the minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Point of order.
Yeah.
Just note that Commissioner Hubler has arrived for the roll call.
Okay. Would you like to make the motion to approve the minutes now?
I'll do that, sir. Motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Additions, corrections, oops. Yes.
Not to be pedantic about it, but I suppose when you're talking about Grant Sullivan, it should be boss.
Boss.
Chair.
Chair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
rather than just commissioner. Other than that, I have no objections.
Okay, so we make the change. And with the change, call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The minutes of the meeting from May 17th are approved. Public comments. Has anybody signed up for public comments?
No.
This time I'm going to open the public hearing on Ordinance D 23-76, Housing Affordability. And Jason, will you give us the presentation?
Yes. So this is the ordinance that we discussed when we brought the technical memorandum for about a month ago. So it makes a number of changes to, I was just getting ready to pull up my packet, so I apologize. It makes a number of changes to, thank you so much. Makes a number of changes to the city's municipal code to kind of reduce the cost of constructing housing and the process which it takes to create certain housing through regulatory streamlining. So in general, it will exempt a number of housing types from having to go through design review to include, we currently only exempt single-family homes, detached single-family homes, and accessory dwelling units. The additional housing types that would be exempted from design review are fourplexes, townhomes, triplexes, duplexes, attached single-family homes / townhomes. We really don't have any sort of design standards that we're really looking for through design review, so we could do the same checks that we would do through design review at the time we're doing the building permit. So there's not a loss of review. There's just a loss of having to do 2 permits for the same project. And we've already taken steps to make design review purely administrative, which was one of the recommendations. The other one, as we talked about, would amend the requirements for open space. Instead of requiring a flat 20%, it would establish 193 square feet per unit. And then it would also exempt projects that are including subdivisions that are within a quarter mile of a public park, so that people who are within walking distance of a public park don't need to build a park facility right next to a public park. And then some ways that we've identified to reduce infrastructure cost we've expanded the frontage and lieu fee program so that currently it only applies to 2 and 3 lot short plats. We've expanded it so that it could go up to 4 lots or up to a fourplex. So 4 residential units, whether 4 single-family homes or a fourplex, they would be able to pay a frontage and lieu fee. Same with the sewer connection. Right now, we currently only exempt single-family homes and duplexes. We've expanded this to allow for residential buildings containing up to 4 units, and also 4-lot short plats would be able to go onto a septic system. And then we've increased the use of our access tracks so that we can have narrow roadways for some smaller short plats. So up to 6 lots could go off of a private access track. Still meets all fire access standards, so it's 28 feet wide, has a sidewalk on one side, but it doesn't have to be a 50-foot right-of-way. It doesn't have to be as large as a public road to provide access to those 6 homes. And then we've already switched to a bedroom-based count for parking. And so this is tied one to our grants. These are the same amendments we discussed in the technical memorandum, which both the Planning Commission and the City Council voted for, recommending that we move forward with the ordinance to make the actual changes. We do have to have this done by the 27th of June. So the hope is that the Planning Commission will make a recommendation tonight, and then we would take it to the City Council on the 27th of June. I can answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions? Yeah, Carrie?
Currently, we're expanding it to 4 lots.
Okay. Part of it. The old word.
Yeah, so currently it's 2 to 3 lot short plats. We're allowing up to 4 lots. So a 4-lot short plat would do it in lieu fee, and up to a project containing basically a fourplex. So if there was a lot that wanted to build a fourplex, we would allow them to do frontage and lieu fees instead of doing the actual frontage improvements. The problem is when there's these small projects like that, you just kind of get these sidewalk crumbs all over the place. So what we do is we take those frontage and lieu fees and kind of pile them together with other funds and build long stretches of sidewalk where it would have the most impact for the community. Yeah.
Anywhere.
Yeah, so a 6-lot plat would have to build the sidewalks. You have to have a reason. You have to have a kind of a, and his actually is a pretty long segment there. I know, of Angeline. It's
No, we're off of.
yeah, Churchill. Okay, it's a pretty long property there. So yeah, you have to have a kind of a cutoff point. And what we found is with the 4 lots, they're usually the frontages are really small, usually 100 to 150 feet long. So they're really small segments. But yeah, that project would have to still build. And I wouldn't recommend, and the engineers wouldn't recommend going to 6 lots for a frontage and loop in program.
Brad, you have a question?
So the switch from to a bedroom-based calculation for off-street parking. So what is that? What is it currently, and what's it switching to?
Well, that ordinance already passed.
Okay.
So, as I mentioned in the memo, when we did the 2022 Development Code amendments, we switched to a bedroom-based count. So for multifamily, currently it's 2 units or 2 parking stalls per residential units. Under the current code as it reads now, if it's a 2-bedroom or above, it's 2 stalls. If it's a 1-bedroom, I think it's 1.5, and then studios are half or 1.
Oh, okay.
I can pull that up real quick and tell you for sure. And Commissioner Hubler, if you want to make a recommendation to the council that they go to 6, that could be in the Planning Commission's recommendation. You don't have to go with our recommendation. The Planning Commission is free to make their own.
Where's the funding coming from? Is it from the builder?
So yeah, the way in lieu programs work is there's a $150 linear foot calculation, and we just calculate it out, and they give it to us. That could be a recommendation. As I said, it's hard to make the decision. We've only done 2 and 3, and so now we're going to 4. But the planning commission's free to make that as a recommendation. Not saying it would be incorporated in the ordinance, so we would go with that, but that can be part of the recommendation that we bring forward to the city council, that it goes up to whatever number the planning commission would set.
So one thing I'd like to offer, though, as a thought is that even though that 6 today may seem kind of silly, you really do that for future. You do that as the properties along there are developed or sold, which is the potential, and that they would then be required at that point to put in their pieces. And I've seen it be very effective. When I worked for the city of Tacoma, at first it felt very piecemeal, but as the area started to fill in, you got nice contiguous sidewalks.
It won't happen where we live. So the way Church Lake Road is you have this one big development, and they have sidewalks within their development, and they come out to the edges, and then they stop. And then you have house, and then you have another development. It's all the backsides of Ptarmigan Ridge, where the way they built that is the sidewalks come out to the corner and right at the edge, and then they stop. And there's no sidewalk all the way to the next development, which is far down the road around the corner. And then there's no sidewalk between this road of Ptarmigan Ridge and this road that is, a block and a half away on the other end of Ptarmigan Ridge. So there's no sidewalk on that side. And then on my side of the street, which I live on the right-hand side of the street, there's not a sidewalk anywhere. Nowhere in sight is there a sidewalk anywhere on Church Lake Road. So if you put one right after my development that is in the middle of nothing, and there will never be another development built, he has the only land that can be developed on. It used to be a farmhouse, and one house sits on that lot, and he's got a few acres of land, so he's going to develop that into 6 houses. And then after that is single family homes on dirt gravel roads, and then single family homes on dirt gravel roads, and then there's Kelly Lake Road. And then you go to the other side of Kelly Lake Road, and it's single family home, single family home, single family home, and they all have dirt roads that go down to their houses. And then the next development isn't until you get down to, can I think of the name of that one? It's almost to 214th, and there is, again, no sidewalks that come out onto the road. They all are inside their developments. They have sidewalks. So putting one individual sidewalk on a road where it would be the only sidewalk in existence on the road would be absolutely pointless. When we all walk on we have these in between like the road and our fence lines, we have some, walking space. So all of us that walk, we walk down those grass areas and walk to Ptarmigan Ridge to be able to walk across to the other developments where there are sidewalks. But that would just be kind of almost like a pointless spot.
Possible in the future, somebody will buy those houses and develop them.
And that's where I've seen that.
That's the thing. There's no possibility to develop anything. Everything is already developed around us.
One thing that you have to remember is that even if it's already built, doesn't mean it can't be bought and destroyed. I mean, I've seen it. I'm sure other
right, but they're not going to build. They're not going to put multiple units on these smaller lots. They're already built on smaller
They
lots.
combine the parcels.
Yeah. They could buy up the whole. What I'm saying is that don't discount that they wouldn't at some point. The potential is certainly there. There is an opportunity to do that. Now, I don't know, Jason, if in this case Corliss has the opportunity, is there a variance available if he chose not to do that based on neighborhood feedback, not to build that sidewalk? Is that a variance?
We don't have those variant type things because that would just every developer in every plat would.
I realize.
Say, I don't want to build the frontage improvements on Angeline. I don't want to improve the. I mean, Angeline's kind of the contrary example of that, where it has been piecemealed over the time, and now we're going back and filling in all the gaps.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
And that's where I think money would be better spent, is filling in those gaps on places that are walkable. Like, it would be fantastic if we could take Church Lake Road and fill that in and be all sidewalked, but then there's nowhere really to go. Church Lake goes from 214th to Sumner Buckley Highway. So it's not like there's any way to piecemeal anything, because like I said, every developed neighborhood, their sidewalks stop at the edges of their roads. They don't come out along the frontage on Church Lake Road. There's no frontage sidewalks there. And they just
As
end.
memory serves, 214th and 410, a gas station did some rebuild, and by mistake, they weren't required to build a sidewalk.
the 214 to 14 gas station paid money because at the time that they were going to do their frontage improvements, we were doing the 214th roundabout.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't want them to do frontage improvements when we were getting ready to rip them out and build a roundabout. I'm trying to get logged on, and I can pull that area up, and then I don't know if that would help or hurt the discussion, but at least I can pull it up. So just if you bear with me just a second.
So my opinion is, like, I get how it wouldn't necessarily work for you, but all of Bonney Lake, I don't want to make that change because it would help other neighborhoods where it might not help that one. So, like, since we're going from 2 to 3, or we had 2 to 3 before, and now we're moving it to 4, I think it makes a little bit more sense. But moving it all the way up to 6, I don't know if that makes sense. So, like, that would be like doubling the space.
So if you think about any of the other areas that you can develop in right now, anything below 6 is going to be, or 6 or below is probably going to be like behind Walmart or somewhere like that, where there is properties that have land, and those could be maybe developed at some point. But in an area like mine where it's already developed, and this is the last parcel that can be developed into houses, there's just kind of like this, where what's the purpose of then spending $1 million on sidewalks when that $1 million could go to the city to build sidewalks where it could be useful, is kind of the thought. Like, there's not going to be a ton of small developments built anywhere that there's major roads. Angeline is, been thoroughly built out. And I think that's one of those perfect places where you can put rest of that sidewalks in.
I would say Angeline's not thoroughly built out.
I was going to say the
We've got a lot of property down there that's still
Down on the farmland and
all the way.
all the way up to the bridge
Yeah,
on the south side of that road.
yeah. There's quite a bit of
right.
open.
But you guys have sidewalks all up the right side,
No,
Yeah,
on the north side of the road, right?
no.
Correct?
It only goes to right past
Where the development.
and then
Okay.
Right, so I've actually was able to log on. So if you look at your screen, I can bring up that area and so this is the property that you're referring to right here.
Yep.
Um,
So, like, right across the street, there's the park.
yeah.
And you can see where the sidewalks end on the
Yeah.
other side of the street. There's no sidewalks going down that side. So that developer was never made to develop those sidewalks. And then same when you go down here to this other end of Ptarmigan Ridge,
Yeah.
their sidewalks end as well. And they're in this massive development, not just a little 6-compartment development. So I understand, like, sidewalks inside the development.
So I will say that this property at the corner is developable and redevelopable in multiple lots. And so are most of these lots on the south side.
Mhm.
And we're actually doing a big, possibly intersection improvement right here. So I don't know. It would create a gap on this side, right here. And then, yeah, there would be none on this side. But we're also looking at this curve. I believe this project put in sidewalks.
They only go, if you look,
Yeah, they're right
they're
here.
right here is where it ends on both sides.
Yeah,
They're the only ones that put any road frontage.
yeah. This property is subdividable here. This one, questionable. These are definitely all, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. I don't think this one is.
That is not actually.
And then this
Corliss actually owns that. Scott Corliss owns all that.
Yeah, this,
Right behind my green belt.
yeah, this one is developable. It's large enough.
It's only one house, so he's building his personal home on it.
I'm just saying,
I know it's actually not developable because the only way in is a road that we purposefully, my neighborhood, made sure it happened. Everything on the sides of that road is greenbelt. He cannot build anything except up at the end towards the ridge. He can only build one house on there. So I know that one is not developable. And then on the other side of him is not developable because that's got a ton of greenbelt space in there, and it's wetlands. That's what it is, wetlands.
there are wetlands along that southern edge, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, I don't know. I'm just saying, our recommendation is to go only to 4. The planning commission can make another recommendation. It would apply citywide, so it's hard to say that, using this as one example, yes, it would be weird maybe in this one example. But as I said, the planning commission can make any recommendation they would like to the city council. Our recommendation is to not go above 4. We've used it on 2 and 3 lot short plats pretty successfully. Once you get above 4, you're getting into some larger projects. But as I said, we will take any recommendation to the city council.
Right? Is it even feasible if in a situation like this, which probably isn't the only one in the city, where the builder could, I don't know, donate the funds, equal amount of funds to the city for construction of sidewalks in lieu of doing them there? I mean, it would have to be approved, obviously, by the city somehow, but
I think we'd have better luck buying the winning lotto ticket. Them to donate those funds.
I won $75 once.
Two problems with donations.
I almost feel like it could be something where it's you have a choice above, maybe it's above 4. You are either going to build sidewalk, or you can give that money at the $1.50 a linear foot to the city to build sidewalks where it should be or needed to be built. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Not that they just don't have to. It's maybe there's a way to say that money can be then. I mean, even the 2 and 3, I feel like if they're going to have a need for sidewalks inside, cool. If there was a need or a code that says you have to build sidewalks on the exterior side, but there's nothing that's going to connect them. If the city can take that money now and finish sidewalks in areas where they are needed to be finished, then that money can be used. And then later on, say all of a sudden everything along the, Church Lake Road is finally developed and there's hundreds of houses down there, which God forbid, I hope doesn't happen because that road is already atrocious. Then the city would be like, oh, well, now we have funding from other developments to build those sidewalks all at once.
I would say the fee would need to be significantly higher. Because what it costs the city to build a section of sidewalk is usually 2 to 3 times higher than it costs a private developer.
Mm-hmm. You're right, because
of the way that we have to do bidding laws.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my concern. It's not, because at that point you're not getting a dollar for dollar swing. You're getting more like a half. I mean, we can bring you I think we have some sidewalk projects that are over $1 million for And it's, I mean, you were at council last night. I mean, Councilmember Kleinman's had his kind of issue with how much it's costing us to build a playground, $250,000. It's just the way the bidding laws are set up. So my only concern with going higher is you're not getting the same amount linear foot of sidewalk that you would be at just the base.
Why not
150.
recommend then that, they have to give the city the amount that it would cost?
It would have to be the amount that it would cost the city.
Yeah.
Which would be,
whatever it would cost. If it's $3 a linear foot, then say $3 a linear foot in lieu of you having to build sidewalks.
But if they could do it $1.50, why would
Then
they
they'll
give
build
you
them.
three?
Then they'll build
Same
them.
kind of donation issue, because they're not going to give you $3 if it's going to only cost them $1.50. They'll say, "I'll put it in. I'll be done."
Some of them don't want to put them in though. Or if it's
But
kind
if
of.
they could say 50%, that's a lot. That's a lot of money for them to save.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I mean, I'll take any recommendation the
That's
planning
where
commission wants.
if you give them that option and you say you build it or give the money, the city X amount per linear foot that you would have had to build, that then gives them the option, you build it or the city takes the money.
But I think the city would have to be the one that makes the decision whether we want to accept it or not.
Why not make it the same amount? Why make it the city's amount?
Huh?
In other words, they're going to spend X amount of dollars to build a sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
They can't, it's not practical, it's of no use, whatever their excuse is. Take that same amount and just turn around and give that amount to the city to use whatever it can.
Because we wouldn't be able to build the same amount of sidewalk.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is the cost to the builder would be, they make a decision, they're going to only spend so much money. So
I guess that's the point, though, is if you sell them, they can get off the hook by paying half the money, they're going to always do that. And then we will build less sidewalk over time because we build it.
yeah, but they're not off the hook because they either have to build it, spend the
I
money.
guess the public doesn't get the same benefit.
We're getting less sidewalk
But if
no
it's
matter
in-
where it is.
if it's in the middle of nowhere and there's no sidewalks around it, that's kind of my.
No, I understand. I'm just saying if they were going to build a half a mile of sidewalk, if they don't want to build it, then they need to give us the money to build a half a mile of sidewalk
Why?
because they're not building a half a mile of sidewalk, which is their requirement.
Yeah, but they're building it based on the 150 per linear foot.
We can't build. That's what I'm saying
I
is
understand that, but what I'm saying is that why are they then required to triple the amount of money they have to give?
Because you can't get as much sidewalk.
But it's money that's going to the city that they wouldn't have had before.
Yeah, but
But we would-
Build
It's the
sidewalks
amount
where-
that they're being required to spend. So
Like on School 10, our sidewalks still don't connect all the way through. Like being able to just have $1.50 a linear foot could help to finish sections of sidewalk, even if it's not the full.
I like I said, I will take whatever the planning commission recommends. I'm just saying that one of the challenges is we can't build sidewalks for what a private developer can build sidewalks for, and it's nothing that the city can change. It's the state way the state system is set up for governmental contracting. And so, if you were to expand it above 4, my concern would be that you're actually building less sidewalk over time throughout the city. You'd be creating more gaps in the system. That's my concern. I'm not saying I mean, as I said, that's our concern. We'll take whatever recommendation the planning commission would like us to the city council. But that's why we landed on 4.
Any other comments, questions? It is 6:30, so I am going to close the public hearing, and we will move to the recommendation. And we have a recommendation in the packet.
Yeah, what I would recommend is make the motion that the suggested motion on page 5 of the packet and get that on the floor, and then there can be debate about additional additions to that recommendation. Because without that, you really don't have anything on the floor.
Or if somebody would make,
And I'm willing to help if anybody wants to craft a recommendation, I will help wordsmith it for them.
So would somebody make the recommended motion? All right.
So I move to recommend that the city council approve ordinance D 23-76, making a series of amendments to the city's development regulations to support housing affordability.
For a second. Okay. Discussion.
I'm in debate in my own head.
Personally, I think any sidewalk that's built eventually, that's my idea.
I would concur with you. I think that you have to look at the big picture. You have to look at strategic rather than and over time, and it may not happen in 10 years, but again, putting those pieces together, I think will bring, the livability that we're all looking for our neighborhoods.
A couple of years ago, there's a kettle out by, Myers Road Middle School. What is it?
Lake Ridge.
Lake Ridge. Yeah. And there was a flooding, and it turned out that there was a couple of city streets out in the middle of nowhere. And there are private roads and trails, and you get over there, and suddenly there's the street. And nobody could explain why we had the street. But it was there, and we had to maintain it.
And I will say, too, that on Church Lake, I do believe that there was some proposals to council that those are in our top 10 projects to start adding sidewalks on Church Lake. I can't remember where, but there were some gaps identified between those neighborhoods where we were starting to look at building the sidewalks.
I would mention also the sidewalks have a lifespan and they require maintenance. You do them piecemeal. If they're out in the middle of nowhere and they're not maintained, they're going to be degraded to the point they won't be useful when they do develop.
And then who maintains them?
I've not seen that.
I have. Church Lake Drive over there has got a couple that were started and now are just basically rubble.
But when they go to,
Yeah, basically the end.
they have to rebuild them eventually.
Eventually they'll have to, which means it doubles the price.
I think there's money that could be better spent somewhere putting sidewalks onto Sumner Buckley Highway where people have an opportunity to walk. Because if you live on my side of 410, there's no opportunity to walk anywhere. You can't get to 410 without walking along the sides of the road. And if you look at the way Sumner.
Are you referring to Veterans Memorial or Sumner Buckley?
Well,
Because after Angeline,
it turns to veterans.
after Angeline turns to Veterans and it becomes city. For Angeline all the way out to 214th is county. So even if we took revenue and took impact fee or in lieu fees, we would never build a sidewalk there because that's county road.
The right side of the road is city because that's where Swiss Park and that development is.
The city's boundary edge is right at the right of way edge. So the road and where all the sidewalk would all be Pierce County.
Okay.
But
another thought is if you drive up Church Lake Road, here's another problem. There's nothing but a cliff on one side and a really steep hill on the other side. As you're coming from Veterans Memorial up Church Lake Road, that's all over top of Kelly Farm. So there's nothing but a cliff. So there's not even going to be a place to piecemeal sidewalks together unless they completely develop and fill all that in, because we barely have a road wide enough for 2 cars or 2 lanes, let alone they would have to dig into the side of a hill, which is somebody's property, which their houses sit up above that.
I do want to bring up one other thing just not to talk anybody out, just for consideration. I'm going to bring my mapping up again. I forgot to mention this. The future Fennel Creek Trail extension actually comes up here, kind of through this area, and then we are going to be building sidewalks as part of that trail network all the way along to Church Lake, and then we're going to build them all the way up West Taps Highway. That's the next couple phases of Fennel Creek Trail.
Where would Fennel Creek be coming? The trail come up in? It would come up into that development down there.
No, Church Lake Road, right here, kind of where this intersection is. We have an easement through this property already.
So that's down at Kelly Farm.
This part's WashDOT. This right here.
Okay, so that's the piece where Mrs. Corliss lives in that corner lot right there, where Church Lake and
Yeah, right here.
yeah, that's Mrs.
Yeah.
Corliss. So the state owns
That.
that strip in between. So there would be, because like what I'm saying is, okay.
So the
So,
next
because
phase
that
of,
whole section where Mrs. Corliss lives, there's no opportunity to build sidewalks there.
right, and the Fennel Creek Trail comes up through here, through the WashDOT property, and then kind of through this green belt, and then comes out to Church Lake Road here at the intersection to that subdivision, and then basically is a 10-foot wide sidewalk trail all the way to Church, all the way to West Taps, and then all the way out to the.
So
That's the plan to get it from all the way to out to Allen York Park at this point.
So my question is in changing this, even just from 3 to 4, the development that is on Church Lake Road, it's the newest one.
This one right here is the newest.
That on the other side of the street from it.
Yep.
So that one and the one across the street from it, they don't have frontage sidewalks. How come they don't have frontage sidewalks?
They put frontage on right here, but not on this side because they didn't. This isn't part of the subdivision.
Well, even on the other small one.
And I will say this: there are a number of these plats that were done under Pierce County before we annexed them, and we kind of had to live with what they approved. So that could be, it could be too. I'm not disagreeing with what you're seeing out there. The reason Ptarmigan Ridge doesn't have sidewalks on Roads Lake Road was that wasn't required when the county did their plat, and then we annexed the plat. And I think this one is an older plat too. So you're dealing with time and different regulations. I was just pointing out that there are plans to put some sidewalks on those roads in those locations for the Fennel Creek Trail, and I forgot to mention that, so I do apologize.
We have a motion, we have a second.
So because of that information, Jason, I'm okay with then having that requirement, because if there's going to be city sidewalks that will add in to get us to Allen York Park at some point, that will help people to have somewhere to walk. But if we were just having one development in the middle of nowhere with nothing around it and no opportunity to expand ever, that would be different. But I see where what you're talking about and being able to connect trails, and I know that's been a big part of our trail system is connecting, but I didn't know that's where that trail was going to go. I've always tried to figure out where the heck you're going to do that trail, but
That's the plan. We're going to go for a grant for the next design phase. It may shift, it may change, I don't know, but that's kind of the current thinking right now.
okay, because that will give people an opportunity to walk to city property where right now we have none of that. We can't walk it.
It would allow people to flow around that corner and walk all the way south
Mm-hmm.
to downtown.
Mm-hmm. Which right now we have none of that.
Yep. And I will say that's why we're kind of doing the trail the way we're doing, to kind of be able to pick up those things. So
Okay. That gives me huge information and now I can see if there's something that's coming in there that will allow people to walk, that's great. I just don't want to see waste of money sitting somewhere where the city could use that money instead.
Yeah, most of the places that we're seeing, like the little 2 and 3 lot short plats and 4 lotters, are like are basically in the really kind of original part of Bonney Lake where you had maybe a half acre lot, and they're coming in and doing 2 or 3 lots, or they had 3/4 of an acre and they're coming in, but everything else is a smaller lot. So we're moving out of that kind of big scale development like Sky Island and stuff like that. And it's going to be a lot more of these little infill things where they're going to be the weird vacant lot. I mean, if you ever want to come over, I can show you some of the weird little properties that we're getting for short plats and subdivisions. They're really kind of awkward shaped properties. Not properties people would think would be subdividable, but they are. Because you only need to have a 2 lot short plat. You only need 16,000 square feet.
So what's the reason then of changing it from, if you're going to have these little tiny developments come in some of these smaller lots, what's the reason for taking it from 2 to 3 to 4?
We for parity, because we wanted to do it for fourplexes to allow for missing middle to be a little bit more affordable, not having to build a fourplex without having to do frontage improvements. And so we felt, for parity's sake, if we're going to allow for a fourplex not to have to do sidewalks, we should allow for a 4 lot short plat to not do sidewalks. So it was trying to make parity between the total number of units. If that makes sense, why we got to 4, it's because we went to a fourplex, because one of the things that we're trying to do with this grant is encourage where they're permitted. We're not changing where they're permitted. We're not changing densities. We're not changing anything but where they're permitted. A fourplex really doesn't. Having to do sidewalks really starts to impact their ability to construct them. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was preserve that parity. If we're going to allow a fourplex not to have to do frontage improvements, we should allow for a 4 lot short plat not to do it. So that's kind of how the 2 numbers came together. If not to say that it was right or wrong, but that's I think the thought process that I had going in my head.
And there's out there from different construction areas that anytime you're building a multiple unit building, you can save up to as much as 50% on cost, because you're doing shared walls, shared plumbing, shared, so there's a lot of economies of cost that you're going to be able to. And again, that then is able to be passed along to the potential next homeowner or renter, depending on what the situation happens. There's some early advantages there for that.
Motion has been made. It has been seconded. I'll call the question. All those in favor of recommending Ordinance D 23-76, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion goes forward to council. On continuing business, TTROS tabling calendar. Jason?
So we put together a calendar. Well, I didn't. Super assistant planner Kennedy put together a calendar for me that kind of outlines the different dates for the Tunes at Tap, and along with the Bonney Lake Days, and who will be out there. Kennedy, Meddy, or Shaley. Shaley is our code enforcement officer and has graciously agreed to pretend to be a planner, which I'm not sure why she did that, but I'm not going to say no to help kind of staff the tables. And then we put down when the commissioners would be there. We don't have anybody for the Bonney Lake Day, so if there's commissioners that want to show up, let me know or let Kennedy know. And if there's specific times on those days that you want to show up, let us know. But we'll be doing 2 things. We will be doing the primary focus. We'll have all the conceptual plans for the 3 parks, the 3 community parks. Midtown Park, Allen York Park, and Victor Falls Park, bubble diagrams and taking feedback. The conceptual designs are based on the survey results we got, and I'll have some comments about that later. But so this is just the schedule. If you want to go to a different date or if you want to go to a different time, just email Kennedy, and she can get you on the schedule.
But we know we need some volunteers.
We're pretty covered, except for, like I said, the Bonney Lake days. We've got at least one. We've got at least 2 commissioners in every one of them. We just don't want to go to 4 because that creates a special meeting,
Right.
which gets goofy.
I'll email you, Kennedy, but I can do that.
And it's really easy. There's going to be talking points. It's mainly to listen. We're not trying to convince people that this is what they should do. We're trying to say, based on what we heard, this is what we think. What do you think now? Mm-hmm. And just we'll have sticky notes, and there'll be a new map every time. So people can mark on it, and we'll have 8 maps that we'll have to digest at the end of this thing or not.
Tell us what you think.
Kennedy, I can help support Bonney Lake Days on Saturday.
26th. Yeah.
6 from 11 a.m.
And I am saying thank you from the bottom of my heart, because for the month of August, I won't be here. So the fact that my staff and the planning commission are taking the lead on this and stepping up, I really am thankful that it's not all on me. So I do appreciate it for that effort.
I can do the 25th as well. I'm not going to. The 26th is my birthday, so I have plans for that.
You don't come hang out? No, I'm taking my road trip in Curiosity. That's road trip month.
He's going.
I got the map if you want to see it.
He's going on a long road trip.
Oh.
I'll confirm. I need to figure out what my schedule's going to be like. That so far away still.
So I had a question. Did we get the name tags for the new commissioners yet?
We can email Debbie. Debbie was the one that was ordering those, and I don't know.
We'll have shirts.
Shirts, I don't know yet. Name tags, I can definitely get those.
Talk about
Making our own, yeah. And we have the lady that we use for all our embroidery. She's just up in Edgewood. So if somebody wants to have stuff done on their own and buy a shirt that they like and embroider on or screen printed on or anything like
They
that.
have a minimum order.
Nope, she'll do anything. I can hand her a hat and say embroider it, and she'll embroider it. And she's very quick turnaround, so. And she's super
If there was
inexpensive.
7 or 8 people, then it would be cheaper.
She charges if you have your own item, she charges us it's like $5 or $6 or something like that to embroider. So it's not much at all. She's really inexpensive. She didn't charge us much.
What color? I know we're going to have that question.
Whatever color you want.
All right.
I got green, red, and blue, so there's no official
Mood
color.
he's in for the day.
Huh?
Whichever mood you're in for the day.
Whichever one's not dirty.
Oh, I love it.
They're kind of a rotating, which Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, whatever's left.
That's so funny.
It makes getting dressed for work easy in the morning. I don't have to think.
That's true. That's true. Okay.
What are the good of the order? Correspondence?
That's you. Correspondence? Do we have any letters that come in? You say no.
No.
There. That's you. You're the tracker of the letters. Staff comments. I do have a couple. So I don't know if you've seen. I haven't because I don't have a Facebook account. But social media went out today for the online open house for the Parks, Trails, Recreation, and Open Space Plan. So kind of more deep dive into some topics and some questions on specific parks now. There's a link in there to the survey results. Doesn't sound like much, but we got 900 responses to the survey, which is very, very good. It gives you a good understanding of what the community is looking for out of their park system. To me, there were some surprises in there. I say just take a read through it. Read through the comments in the end. There's some that are interesting. And so, and I'll email out that link to the planning commissioners as well, along with, and then in the survey, it has the online open house. That's going to run till the 28th of June. Then we're going to do the tabling events through the summer. Then this fall, we'll do another online open house, and then also kind of a final in-person open house before we start looking at adoption late this year, early next year. So we're really trying to understand what, not just what we think people want from the parks, but what they actually want from their park system. And I've always said that will drive the cost. A green field with a playground is very different than a field 5 like we built at Allen York Park. Those are very different costs. There is a stakeholder meeting this week for the Parks, Trails, and Recreation Open Space Plan, which Commissioner Hubler will be at. So hopefully at the next Planning Commission meeting, maybe Commissioner Hubler can report back on what the stakeholders did. I know it'll be a couple months out. That will help inform this as well. We're going to begin to have some discussions with them on that's on the 28th of June, kind of in the middle of the day. Also, at the tabling events, we're going to have kind of a fact sheet for the comprehensive plan kickoff, saying it's coming. I had a meeting with the team, and Kennedy was part of it. We're not in the same position that I think a lot of cities are in the Puget Sound region because of what our growth targets are. So I'm not seeing significant wholesale changes to the comprehensive plan the way we do things. We're not like University Places having to figure out how to add more housing or Puyallup. I think our existing zoning capacity will be able to handle it. We're doing that analysis right now. So more to come on that, but that will be there as well, just kind of a kickoff. That'll be really kicking into the gear during the fall and winter. And as I said, that was the big items from staff. And I can answer any questions if people were at City Council last night. There was a whole bunch of discussions about parks. And I'm willing to answer any questions if people have questions about that. So with that, there's no more staff comments.
I do have a question about that. With the parks and them talking about that it's going to cost about $200,000 to install the equipment that we already own. I know there was talk when we still had our Parks Commission of having volunteers come together to install that equipment. Is that an option?
I believe it wasn't. I think that's why they went to the consultant doing it, the company doing it. Had to do with some, I don't know. I wasn't working on that.
So there's liability.
Yeah, there's a
issues.
liability of not being constructed or installed correctly.
The potential of
Even if 20 years from now something fails, they put it in wrong.
I think they looked at that, and the decision was made to go with Playtime doing it. I wasn't in part of all those discussions, but that was I know it was that was the original plan, and it changed to using. And I will say part of that money is also to put the mat down below it.
Not just installing.
It's not just installing. It's also putting, instead of using wood fiber chips, which are a maintenance nightmare and not
Splinters galore.
Yeah, not as good for wheelchairs. It's going with a rubberized tile mat, which we don't own and would have to have installed. And I think that was the big cost driver.
That makes more sense than what they were saying last night about $200,000 to install. They didn't talk about the other piece that
It's also purchasing the rubber mat, preparing the surface for the rubber mat, and installing the rubber mat, and then installing the equipment on top of it. So yes, the total cost to install is that, but it's also purchasing that part of it.
Okay. That makes more sense to cost that much money. But when they were talking about that last night, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, just to install equipment, that's insane. So that makes more sense.
I had one thing. When we went to the joint meeting, the council gave us the option of finding projects on our own. And I've had two business owners build, and each of them complained about the permitting process. That they were redoing things, they were confused about it. And I know a couple of them, Cheater and Timber Ridge, would probably like to say something about it. And it maybe it's an idea for us to develop
Permit process.
just a review of the permit process
Mm-hmm.
and get the people in.
What specifically were they upset about?
Cheater had, I remember specifically, he had a drainage pond. And it was all approved and everything. Then he came back and said, you have to put a sidewalk in. And he had, I think, a sump pump that he had to redo a couple of times. And he kept a record of it, so his next project, it was a lot easier. Dr. Levine, and it was just a lot of, why can't we get this done? Why can't we get this done? And I didn't get any of the details on that.
As opposed to it being approved and then changed.
Yeah.
Which I can understand.
Yeah. I don't know if he complained about any changes or not. And then we got Bonney Lake Tavern being rebuilt.
Yeah.
I would imagine the owner would have something to say about it too. George. I don't even know George. So.
He owns a Lago.
Mhm.
George Phillips.
Catered.
I know that there is, I've talked with Chris Lear Teeter, and he would love to lay it all out. Like, here's the process. That way it helps other businesses as, like, I want to build a building here in Bonney Lake. I've already reached out to Chris, like, Chris, I need your help, because I know he knows the process and he knows every step. And then I can sit down with Jason over there and say, tell me about the land and the plot, but the process, Jason or Chris just has it all laid out. So I think having something like that, I love that idea of sitting down with people like that that are stakeholders.
I think this can be done better, and this is what happened to us and what we want to do.
Yeah.
But,
I think it's a good idea to get feedback.
Simplifying a process.
Terrifying.
Yes, clarification and simplification would be really nice. I'm only looking forward to it.
Well, Commissioner Chair Solomon and I spoke. I think we're always looking at how we can improve the system.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to identify kind of what the goal here is. The goal is it? And I think identifying as streamlining the permitting process, that's a fine goal. And then understanding where we have flexibility and where we don't. And I think sometimes we get complaints for things that we really have no control over. So my classic example is the energy code. Builders hate the energy code. It is horrible. Nothing I can do. It's the state adopted building code. So it's understanding where those lines are, and understand there are things we can. I'm not saying we can't. Trust me. Moving from administrative design review, from a design review hearing to administrative design review, sped the process up significantly because we didn't have to wait for that one time per month where we had. It came with a cost because you're not having that commission meeting anymore, but it streamlined the process, and it's a trade-off between the two things. I just use that as an example. So yeah, we're always looking for ways to streamline the permitting process, make things more efficient, more quickly. We'd gladly have a study session on that, and I think we could do that in probably what I would say do it in the October meeting. Only because I won't be here to get ready for the September meeting, so I think that would be a little unfair to put that on my staff. But I think at that October one, we could talk about it at the September one, come up with kind of the question, right? Like I think that's my only kind of guidance to Chair Solomon was have a question you're wanting to ask so it doesn't turn into just a 3-hour gripe session. Because what you're really wanting to find out is
How can we do better?
how can we do better? Some of those are in control, some of them are not.
Well, the question that I'd have is it really about permitting or is it about inspection and code enforcement? Because I think that when I come in to actually submit for my permit, that's a different process that when my inspectors are out in the field and they determine that there's something that they feel is a deficiency. So I think that you need to look at it and break it into the appropriate areas because, if you're talking about the actual permit itself, I suspect that's not the problem. That's pretty prescriptive. But if I'm talking about, a retention pond and needing, that's part of the inspector. So, you need to ask yourself, is it meeting the building code? Am I not familiar with the building code? Is there something I should have asked that I didn't or something in my plan review? I think you need to look at that. To your point is break it down and figure out where those gaps are at because there certainly is some type of a hole there, but determining where it's at. But I bet it's not with your permit technicians. I bet it's actually more with your in the field folks.
Personal experience a lot of, now this is a while ago when the city was doing inspections, but I had some work done and I had 3 different inspectors with 3 different opinions.
Exactly.
Change it 3 times. Finally, the construction guy brought the state permit book and showed the inspector what was supposed to be. I think one of the things we look at is, I don't know what the inspection staff level is now, but when they work a project, they're responsible for it rather than assigning the next guy the next day, assuming he's going to be on the same page.
Well, we only have 2 inspectors, so, and they usually take a project. We did have a lot of staff turnover and retirements. I would say getting into the staffing levels probably gets outside of the
I just mentioned that as an adjunct because I understand the staffing levels, but the problem I encountered was radically different approaches to the same project from different people.
Yeah.
Consistency.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so just having a streamlined process for all, like here's as a homeowner or a business owner and you're getting ready to build, here's a streamlined process. And then for the staff level, like here's a streamlined process. Here's everything in black and white. And like when I was doing our shop down in Sumner, we had so many issues because this is what it says in black and white, but we have a city engineer going, well, but this is my expectation. Well, that's not in black and white anywhere. So then as a business owner, I'm sitting there going, this is what it tells me I have to have. And you're telling me I have to have something different. But he says, well, I can interpret it my way because that's what the city council allows. But having that always being the same so that as a business owner or a homeowner and you're getting ready to build, having it in black and white so that we know, like if the city engineer is going to say, well, my expectation is such and such, we know in black and white that that's the city engineer's expectation. And that way, if it changes as you go on through a process and you get a new city engineer, say, then that process is still in black and white. And if he wants to change that, it goes back into black and white again with a change so that it's always there to read through and follow those steps.
Don't disagree. And I will say when we do interpretations of our code, we actually publish those online. So if you go to the city website, when we've done an interpretation, because we think there's gray area in the code, at least on the planning side, building not so much because it's pretty much black and white, a hanger's a hanger, a nail's a nail. But on planning, it can get a little gray. When we've done those interpretations, they're posted online and people can, not that people know they're there and not that people can't always find them, but they are there.
I am grateful for that.
And I will show you where
does
they're
not
at.
have that.
No, I think we can, there's always things that we can do better. There's always a process improvements that we can take. We're always willing to listen and learn.
I think there's a consensus that this is an interesting project.
Yeah.
So we'll touch on it in September and start working in October.
Yeah, we'll come up with kind of a permit, streamlining permit improvement project with recommendations the planning commission can make back to the city council.
And I think the commissioners know some people who have developed in the city.
Mm-hmm.
It might be worthwhile to sound them out.
Yep. Pick their brains, find
Yeah.
out what their processes were.
Cool.
Love it. Good idea.
Anything else?
I do.
Yes.
Jason, this is really for you. So the Supreme Court just recently on Waters of the America,
Yeah.
wetlands.
Yep.
Are we going to be looking at, I don't know if anybody else has read the decision. I'm kind of a geek about this. I read through some of it.
Read the
But
synopsis.
yeah.
Does not change our approach.
Okay. That was my question.
Yeah.
Is it-
So
how will it affect, or would it affect us?
it doesn't affect our regulatory structure because our regulatory structure comes from a different source of law, right? The State Growth Management Act and the state laws say we have to protect wetlands and period, right? Regardless if they're connected to a water of the U.S. The WOTUS rule, Waters of the U.S. rule, had to deal with when there's a federal nexus between that wetland and a federal regulated water body. So,
Hayden Lake in this case.
yeah, so in the way that the Army Corps of Engineers gets jurisdictional authority over wetlands is under the Navigable Waters Act. And it says all navigable waters of the U.S. are under basically interstate commerce. They're under the federal control. The WOTUS rule has been interpreted and reinterpreted and uninterpreted thousands of times. At one point, it was based if there was a hydrological connection, which means if there was a groundwater connection between the wetland and eventually a navigable water, that wetland was then subject. They've changed that rule again now. This is the third time they've changed it, and we're waiting to see what that would come out. It will impact developers because they may only have to deal with the city. They may not have to deal with the Army Corps of Engineers, and we would never make that call. When there's a wetland and there's impacts to the wetland, we always say you have to give us a jurisdictional determination from the Corps because we can't assert Corps jurisdiction for them or not for them. So it doesn't change how we do our process. It just changes when developers may or may not have to get permits from the Army Corps of Engineers. But it doesn't change any of our regulatory structure because we would still say it's a regulated wetland. Here's our rules for impacting regulated wetlands. And then then we would say you also need to get a jurisdictional determination from the Corps. If they interpret their new WOTUS rule to say it's not jurisdictional, it stays with us. If it is jurisdictional, then they have to go through whatever the Corps process is.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second? Discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. See you in September.
Well, or the summer.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not a meeting.
But we still get to see each other.
But will I
Still just
see
as
you in
important.
September?
Oh, God.
We'll,
Now you're really dating.
I know.